this week it was announced the General Assembly floated, likes to float upcoming legislation that they're going to consider in the term that begins in January. And this week there was an article about the possibility that assisted suicide from physician assisted suicide might be introduced. And whether from old age or disease, there's nothing more painful than watching a loved one enter that stage where their quality of life is so difficult. This idea of physician-assisted suicide is not a new one. We've had several bills over several years, but there appears to be a real push for it to be passed this year. And it's quite controversial, obviously. Laurie, Delegate Joseline Pina-Malenik believes that such legislation will likely succeed this year because it's restricted to people with terminal illnesses and those who have the mental capacity to make their own decisions. Nonetheless, opponents argue that this is a slippery slope to euthanasia and mercy killing, and that would naturally follow. So what's going to prevent us from going down the slippery slope and making rational decisions?
We're already starting the slippery slope by calling assisted suicide personal autonomy, just like we called reproductive health abortion. We really should, it's a slippery slope. We don't want our granny, granny taking a pill just because they want to, they feel like they're a burden to their family. We don't want it to get to that point. So there is another option. I've not heard about it recently until I watched a video by Dr. Greger, who's a video blogger, and he talks a lot about nutrition and things. It's called VSED, Voluntary Stopping of Eating and Drinking. That is, in a study, 9 out of 10 nurses said that was a very high quality death and their interpretation of how their patients dealt with the death. And it takes an average of 7 days, and it's not painful, and it is less stressful. And if the patient changes their mind, after a couple of days of not eating, they can change their mind and eat again. It's a much more natural way to die, and it's not I don't view that as an assisted suicide type situation. It's more of a natural way to go. So,
just in this discussion, it's a very tough discussion, even just to listen to and to comment on. Nancy, opponents contend that society has a responsibility to preserve the sanctity of life. And so an individual's wish to end their life should be overruled for the overall good. And that even the discussion of physician-assisted suicide, cheapens our value of human life. Is there a way to meld these two ideas together?
Anyone who's ever had to deal with someone in their dying days knows that it's a very difficult situation. And I think the challenge with these things, it's not the individual, it's the people around them. My mom stopped eating and drinking years ago. I asked, she was in a facility. They told me, take her to the hospital. I took her to the hospital. They pumped her full of drugs because their job is to keep her alive. Mm-hmm. Had to move, and they kept her alive. She ended up moving to a rehab place, and within the next week, she died of a heart attack. Now, is that the way to go? Now, I'm not sure that my mother's choice was so deliberate. But the real issue is, how do you create a safe place for those people who want to make that decision to be left alone? I don't know about the eating and drinking issue, if it really works. And you can keep the people around you from intervening. That's one thing. But the minute you call 911 or you speak to a physician, their job is to keep you alive, and that is the problem. Yeah. I recommend the book by Amy Bloom, In Love, which talks about her husband's who'd been diagnosed with end-stage dementia and his decision to end his life. And he had to go to Switzerland to make that happen. It's dreadful. Absolutely dreadful. I don't even see how this can be a partisan issue. It is a dreadful situation for all around. But for those people who have the capacity and have a terminal situation, I mean, those are criteria that would assist, I think, rational decision making. I think it's a slippery slope if you're going to take that approach. The real issue is how do you create a safe place for those people who are equipped to make that decision?
Well, it is
And
a,
we don't in the U.S. now. I think you can go to Oregon and Washington State, but still they have there are issues in how that's managed. Not
no, there
easy,
are 10, there are
hard
10
to do
states
alone.
plus the District of Columbia that have sanctioned physician-assisted suicide. Very tough topic. Thank you all. We'll see what the General Assembly does when it reconvenes in January.